The sky hasn't held a true blue in years. Now it glows a bruise purple at dawn, drifting into ashen gray by midday. Wherever I look, the horizon wavers beneath a haze of smoke and heat an endless, tremoring mirage. The world has become a furnace with no off switch, the forests that once crowned distant. Mountains are gone consumed in firestorms that leapfrog grasslands and canyons alike. Now, only blackened trunks stand, skeletal sentinels against the choking air. Rivers have receded to trickles, their beds baked into cracked clay. The few puddles that remain taste of rust and rot. Particles of metal flaked from pipes long since scavenged. Dot in the lowlands, towns lie in ruins. Streets are fractured, the asphalt peeled back like old paint. Rusting cars sit abandoned in drifts of powdery ash. Storefront windows gape open, their shattered glass glittering in afternoon light like forlorn promises. A faded mural, once a cheerful advertisement for summer fairs, peeks out beneath layers of soot. Now its colors have bled into sickly browns, a ghost of happier days. I remember when that mural caught the eye of passers-by. Now it's a landmark only because scavengers use it as a meeting point. They come in ragged groups, some barter, others pick fights. I've seen broken bodies left by the curb, scavenged for clothes and boots before dutifully discarded. The cities aren't better. Towering slabs of concrete identify themselves only by the outlines of their broken facades. Once proud skyscrapers stand gutted, windows blown out like the eyes of a corpse. Elevated highways have collapsed in places, sending chunks of roadway into the canyons below. I've navigated beneath their jagged edges, a lone figure avoiding the rubble. Every creak of settling steel feels like the world's bones grinding against each other. There is no government to speak of, only ragtag survivor councils sprouting up in pockets where people cling to order for mere weeks before hunger, sickness, or infighting tears them apart. In some areas, former first responders have formed militias predicated on stolen uniforms and the myth of authority. They patrol the deserts between ruined towns, stopping anyone who claims to have water or medicine. Elsewhere, I've heard rumors of enclaves walls encircling small oases defended by armed lookouts. They won't open their gates for strangers, no matter what they carry. Sometimes I approach from a distance, clutching an empty canteen, hoping to trade a broadcast message for a taste of their spring. But they never come. Their silence is a verdict. If you didn't build these walls, you don't deserve what's inside. Church steeples and mosques still cling to dignity amid the debris. Their spires, stained black, but still pointing skyward. Congregations have dissipated faith, seems harder to muster when each breath stings with ash. Occasionally I find a circle of stones where people have left offerings, oil lamps, a handful of stale rice, even a child's toy car, all burned at the edges. I whisper a short prayer as I pass, more out of habit than belief. I think before the wind sweeps the prayers into nothing. Heat domes hover over equatorial zones, baking the land until even cacti shrivel. In the north, permafrost has melted, releasing stagnant pools that teem with algal blooms and toxins. The chill that once defined winter is a memory. Now, even cold days feel like misplaced autumn afternoons. Animals have either fled or gone feral. Flocks of crows follow me, harbingers on blackened wings. Coyotes and wolves prowl the outskirts of burnt forests, their eyes reflecting firelight as they hunt rodents skulking beneath the ash. On rare nights, I hear the guttural howls of something larger, maybe bears forced down from poisoned peaks. I don't linger to find out. Institutions that once promised safety power plants, water treatment facilities, hospitals are empty. Shells, generators sputter in emergency wings, wiring chewed by vermin. In one ruined clinic, I found shelves lined with glass vials, their labels peeled away, and a lone syringe on the floor. I pocketed it, though I'm not sure it'll ever find use. The only signal of civilization that still reaches me is the crackle of my radio transmitter. Less a lifeline than a whisper into the void, I broadcast names of fallen towns, coordinates of so-called safe zones, and whatever bartered rumors I can gather. Sometimes I speak the names aloud: Marshridge, Riverbend, Crescent Falls, hoping someone, somewhere, remembers them fondly enough to keep listening every night. The horizon glows with distant infernos, as if the world's edge is ablaze. I trace those glimmers of light and wonder who's left to see them. The wind carries embers like stars fallen to earth, and I brace for the moment one ignites the fuel lining my shelter. This is where I live now, ash underfoot, a rusted tin roof overhead, and the pulse of a dying world all around me. There is no certainty anymore, only the knowledge that with each sunrise, the fires grow fiercer, the water runs scarcer, and the hope of rescue drifts farther beyond the smoke. Yet here I stand, broadcasting to the dark, praying that someone hears the sound of my voice, ChatGPT said. I call myself Mira Khalid, though my name matters less now than the voice that crackles through the static. Before the megafires swept across continents, I was a climate scientist, one of many who issued warnings. Nobody heeded. I studied atmospheric patterns, measured temperature spikes, monitored drought indices. Back then, data was my language, charts my comfort. Now, I speak into a rusted microphone powered by a bicycle generator, and my only data is the rumble of distant infernos and the hiss of ash settling on my shelter's tin roof. Each morning, I shimmy open the hatch of my small outpost of former water tower, repurposed into a lookout-tanned pier across the ash-blasted plain. I've jury-rigged a set of solar panels, scavenged from abandoned schools, but they're half buried in soot. The generator is my lifeline. I pedal for 10 minutes. Before every broadcast, muscles burning, lungs aching from ash in the air. Only then does the microphone hum, and I offer whatever news I've gathered, coordinates of water caches, rumors of encampments, or simple words of solidarity. Survival here is practical ritual. I ration my saved water more than half a liter each morning, and collect dew caught on scraps of tarp I've stretched around the tower's base. One forage the nearby ruins for canned goods, trading them when I can for filter materials, charcoal from my own fireplace, layers of cloth torn from old shirts. I've learned to distill rain that falls in ash cloud bursts. I capture it in pots, lined with sand, then boil and filter it. The process is slow, but each sip tastes like victory. Yet the mechanics of living aren't all that keep me moving. What drives me is connection proof that out there, amid the ruins, others still breathe. I remember the day I broadcast my first message, a shaky "Is anyone out there?" that drifted into silence. For hours, I wondered if I'd wasted my breath. Then, a crackle, a voice far off calling back coordinates. I nearly toppled off my stool. That moment taught me that hope, once sent rippling out, can echo back in unexpected ways. I've lost more than I can name. My sister Layla stayed behind in Karachi when the fires ignited across the subcontinent. She promised to meet me in what was left of Lahore, but she never arrived. All I found was her scarf, half buried in ash, its intricate embroidery singed at the edges. My partner, Aaron, tried to follow when I fled north. His motorcycle broke down near the Persian Divide. I still hear his radio call static at first, then a final, desperate plea before the line went dead. I keep their voices alive in my broadcasts, whispering their names as a tribute, even if no one's left to remember their tone. Every night, when the glow on the horizon deepens to fluorescent orange, I steel myself for the worst. The tower rattles with embers, and I wonder if it will be my last perch. Sometimes I dream of the world as it was, rain-soaked streets, children's laughter, echoing in schoolyards, the scent of jasmine on evening breezes. In those dreams, I pedal toward a sturdy building with glass doors that welcome me in. I wake gasping for breath, ash in my hair, and remind myself that dreams are dangerous luxuries. Despite the loss, I've found small triumphs, patching the generator with salvaged wiring, deciphering a survivor's map drawn in soot on a factory wall, coaxing life from a single green shoot sprouting in a sheltered crack near my outpost. The shoot has become a silent companion I water it carefully, talking to it as I talk to my unseen audience. It reminds me that even after everything burns, life finds a way. Responsibility rests heavy on my shoulders. I am one voice broadcasting into the void, yet each message could guide someone to water or warn them of a pending flare-up. I've seen too many wanderers collapse halfway across a dried-up riverbed because I didn't relay a storm warning in time. I carry that weight like a scar, a constant reminder that words can savor Dhamma life. Still, there are moments of unexpected grace. Yesterday, I patched together a makeshift antenna from copper wiring found in an old library's electrical room. I climbed to the tower's summit as flames flickered on the skyline, adjusted the feed line, and shouted into the microphone. If you hear this, hold fast. We still matter. For a heartbeat, the world paused. Then came the crackle, a child's voice asking if it was safe to drink rainwater. That voice, fragile and hopeful, was all the affirmation I needed. My story, if you can call it, that is one of constant adaptation. I trade technical papers for mechanical blueprints, scientific jargon for plain speech. I measure hope not in percentages, but in the count of known listeners and in the number of dewdrops I manage to collect each day. I have no grand illusions of rebuilding civilization. I aim only to preserve its memory, to stanch the loneliness that creeps in when the world seems utterly consumed. So here I stand, a lone broadcaster in a scorched landscape. Water caches and green shoots of ember storms and lost friends, of the fragile ember of hope that flickers within each of us. Sunrise is a gift and every breath, a small act of defiance against the flames. The flare-ups began as distant. Horror's small pockets of flame racing through tinder-dry woodlands in the Pacific Northwest. Spiraling out from Siberia, at first I monitored them as data points: area burned, fire growth rate, wind vectors. The numbers climbed like an unholy, ladder-rich increment, a fresh crisis. Then the fires converged, jumping continents on shockwaves of heat and smoke. And a half years ago, the Great Burn began in earnest. Temperatures soared past 50 degrees Celsius in regions that had never seen such extremes. Prolonged droughts baked soils into dust. Rivers shrank into rivulets, then vanished entirely. Lightning, storms, once our rainmakers, struck with ferocity, dry lightning igniting blazes that leaped across fire breaks in walls of flame. What began as isolated wildfires matured into firestorms, self-fueling monstrosities, where heated updrafts drew flames upward. This spring, the global burned area metric topped 300 million hectares, roughly the size of India torched in ash. Heat indices that once hovered around 35 degrees Celsius now crest 50 degrees Celsius for weeks on end. Even the night offers no reprieve. Thermal inertia keeps temperatures above 30 degrees Celsius, and the air settles into a suffocating haze of carbon particulates. Governance collapsed under the weight of multiple simultaneous crises. BROADCAST evacuation orders immediately. Governments simply ran out of fuel, water, and manpower to enforce them. Power grids failed as transmission lines melted in the heat. Services turned to triage, treating only those under 20 or over 60. Everyone else was on their own. Survivor groups splintered into two broad categories: walled compounds built around the last functioning water wells. A single cigarette to calm frayed nerves. Guards patrol the walls, shoot first, ask questions later. They charge tolls in scrap metal or human labor. Roaming tribes who follow smoke plumes to salvage valuables from ruined solar panels, wiring, canned goods. They trade routes as currency, and if your route crosses theirs uninvited, you risk losing everything, including your life. No one talks about refugees anymore. There's nowhere to go. Borders opened and then locked down as poisonous. Even the air itself became toxic. So nation-states installed airborne screening drones. But when those drones ran on gasoline and oil, they too fell silent. Once abundant, now sacred. I rigged my outpost to catch dough each pre-dawn scraps. Of tarp funneling moisture into rusted buckets, but the yield is barely 200 milliliters per night. Every drop is filtered through layers of cloth and charcoal. Stored water is rationed at 0.5 L day. And I've met wanderers whose motto is, drink first, ask questions later. Agricultural systems collapsed under scorching heat and persistent fires. Where farmland survived the flames, soils became sterile, ash-clogged irrigation canals. Commodities like rice, wheat, I supplement with wild edibles ash-tolerant mushrooms. Desert shrubs whose berries burst with tangy moisture, but eating them feels like gambling with food poisoning. Diesel reserves in bunkers went up in smoke. The only reliable energy is human power pedal generators, push bike dynamos, even hand crank flashlights. I reserve my solar panels for emergency charging, though thick ash can coat them in an hour. Every mechanical failure. means scavenging miles for a single replacement part. For listeners who still remember atmospheric jargon, now averaging 1.8 degrees Celsius, above pre-industrial levels lightened soils and dried vegetation, drought severity indices rose into the red zone for consecutive years, creating a continuous tinderbox, pyroconvection. Large fires generate intense heat columns, drawing winds inward like a black hole. Those inflows feed the blaze, intensify its heat, and create cumulonimbus clouds that spawn dry, lightning-seeding new fires hundreds of kilometers downwind. Atmospheric brown clouds, billions of tons of black carbon loft into the stratosphere, absorbing solar radiation and destabilizing jet streams. Weather patterns shift unpredictably. Monsoons stall. Polar vortex disturbances send heat domes. Into northern latitudes, it's a textbook apocalypse, except the textbooks never predicted the scale or speed. Our models capped out at 2 degrees Celsius warming scenarios. We're living the worst-case version of worst case. Every day, I weigh risk versus necessity. Yesterday, I ventured 20 kilometers east to scavenge a ruined pumping station marked on last year's topographical maps. The wind had changed. A fire plume had swung into my path, and I waded through choking ash clouds that stung my eyes like acid. I found a cache of half-buried water bottles, 12 of them. I carried 6, left 6 for someone else, though I doubt another soul will find them this morning. Panel that gave up under the ash. I pedaled for 2 hours straight to recharge, my legs trembling, sweat scalding my skin. By the time I climbed into the tower hatch, I could taste metal in my mouth. Every transmission window is limited by power and risk. The longer I broadcast, the smaller my chance of outrunning that day's incoming ember storm. Yet without those broadcasts, no one knows where to find water, shelter, or each other. Micro-catchment trapping in lieu of large-scale collection. Set up micro-catchment small, reflective surfaces angled to catch dew or ash fall condensation. Line them with fine mesh to reduce particulate load. Ash filtration. Ash behaves like fine sand. It clogs filters. Layering cloth, fine sand, and charcoal in that order can trap both ash and larger pathogens. Ember storm warning. Pay attention to wind shadow effects. Locate natural fire breaks rock outcroppings. Wide roads end. Position your camp downwind of them. Ember storms often leap those roads but lose momentum in rocky terrain. Thermal regulation, insulation is critical. Line clothing interiors with reflective foil from old emergency blankets to deflect radiant heat throughout the day to maintain hydration without triggering thirst pulls that lead to psychological resilience. Broadcast messages of solidarity. Even a simple call and response, "Can you hear me?" loud and clear, can anchor morale in a world untethered by normal society. The megafires aren't slowing. Balloon sensors show stratospheric carbon concentrations reaching levels last seen in the Eocene 50 million years ago. Windows are shrinking. Rainfall patterns have devolved into chaotic bursts, 5-minute downpours, followed by weeks of bone-dry heat. Rivers flood and then evaporate in days, leaving new fault lines in their beds. In the last month, 3 once fertile valleys turned to deserts overnight. My listeners are growing desperate. Reports arrive of roving militias setting up checkpoint bonfires. Others warn of a deadly fungus thriving in moist microclimates, byproduct of decay in half-sunken towns that causes hallucinations and convulsions. I relay these warnings with a tremor in my voice, knowing the cost of silence is far steeper. Each broadcast is a race against time. As I speak, I know the minute hand of my generators gauge inches toward red. If the ember storm arrives mid-transmission, my outpost will catch fire. The tower will collapse. Built will burn. Yet I must speak, because somewhere in that haze of ash, someone listens and every syllable could be their lifeline. I tighten the mic stand, clear my throat, and begin today's bulletin to anyone tuning in. The fire front is approaching from coordinates 34.2 N, 118.7 W. Avoid the dry creek bed below Reynolds Ridge embers. Can ascend it like staircases. I've located a micro-catchment site at waypoint. Bravo, cover it with plastic and cloth layers. Stay low, cover your mouth, and move after sundown when temperatures dip. Repeat, move after sundown. My words crackle through the static, and I pedal faster, knowing each instruction is a matter of life and death. This is the new calculus of our world, a litany of coordinates, micro-survival hacks, and ember storm warnings. We barter and date every scrap of scientific insight could mean another heartbeat. As the fires multiply, so does our urgency. The apocalypse isn't coming. It's already here, and it's hungry. The ember storms have grown more frequent, more vicious. Each broadcast seems to herald a new trial. In the last week alone, I've cycled through an entire day's worth of water just to scrub the ash from my filters, and still I taste grit on my tongue. My food stores shrink in dusty tins. 3 cans of lentils, 2 of sardines, 1 of peaches. The peaches are swollen and fermenting. I hesitate to eat them, but hunger is an insistent friend. I rode out yesterday at dawn, guided by the faint promise of dew along a hidden wash. I carried 3 canteens, 1 empty, to half full land, a handful of ration bars. I slipped through the ruined husk of an office park, legs cramping from the rough terrain, lungs burning from ash that clung to every breath. I found the Washa narrow trench where vegetation still clung to the sides, roots drawing subterranean moisture. I dug with my bare hands, scooping up mud that I filtered through cloth and charcoal. I filled 1 canteen. The others I left for whoever came next. By midday, the sky had thickened to a bruised purple swell. I pedaled back toward the tower as ember storms unfurled behind me, a black tide racing across the plain. I scattered my ration bars for rodents and scorpions, anything to feed the little life that remains. But when I reached shelter, the walls were hot to the touch. My door latch had fused in the heat. I pried it open with a crowbar, finding the inside coated in a fine grit that I'd have to sweep again before nightfall. Water, food, fuel oil. My resource pools are running dry. My generator takes 3 hours of pedaling to charge a single battery pack. I can't risk that on stormy days. Instead, I rely on solar panels, half buried in ash, which yields maybe 10 minutes of transmission time before conking out. My nightly broadcasts have shortened to bulletins, coordinates of water, warnings of new militia checkpoints, whispers of green shoots near an abandoned reservoir. Each message feels like a lifeline thrown from a sinking ship. Rogue factions have grown bolder. This morning I spotted a patrol of 4 rifles slung over shoulders, faces obscured by soot masks marching across the North Ridge. They scouted the horizon, then set fire to a cluster of ruins where they suspected I stored supplies. Flames licked the walls of what had been a community clinic. I could see the smoke plume from my tower. I grabbed my binoculars, peered through the haze. The clinic's weak foundation collapsed, and embers rained down like celestial ash. Whether they were targeting aid facilities or simply torching everything in their path, I can't tell. I hope someone escaped in time. That same patrol stumbled into 2 wanderers I'd met last Wicca pair named Junaid and Safia. They'd been following my broadcasts, carrying an old map marked with waypoints I'd announced. They'd arrived at the map's final coordinate only to find scorched earth and a collapsed water pump. Junaid tried to barter for my remaining lentils. Safia offered to teach me how to distill, do more efficiently. I agreed to meet them later, but the patrol intercepted them. I relayed their last call, frantic static, Safia's voice screaming, a rifle shot, then silence. I haven't slept properly since. Every gust of wind sounds like approaching soldiers. Every crack of settling metal feels like the clinic doors splintering under a torch. I keep the generator indoors now, hidden under tarps, and remove its batteries at dusk, stowing them in my rucksack. I've renamed my station Fort Ember, though nothing about it feels fortified. 2 nights ago, a sandstorm rolled inash mixed with coarse desert grit. I barricaded the hatch and held on to the rails as the tower shook. I could hear the winds howl like a beast at my doorstep. For 12 hours, I lay against the wall, trying to block out the roar. When I emerged, the world was layered in a foot of powder, the thin ladder to the roof sheathed in filaments of soot. I scraped it free, climbed up, and repaired the antennobicos. Even in storms, someone might listen. That night, a transmission bleated through my receiver, Green Valley. Coordinates 36.9 N, 117.4 W fresh water, safe passage. The voice was so clear it might have been next door. My heart nearly stopped. Green Valley. I'd heard the rumors for months. A small valley nestled between 2 ridges where microclimates still hold pockets of life. Some said the springs ran cold. Others whispered of gardens grown in buried seed banks. But every search party vanished. Before confirming anything, I replayed the message until the hiss of static erased it. Could it be real? Or another trap laid by militias eager to ambush desperate souls? The coordinates placed it nearly 150 kilometers north, an arduous journey through fire breaks and no man's land. To go there, I'd need more supplies than I possess. I'd need allies. Trust is a rare currency now. I recall the last time I trusted someone when I traded my last 2 ration bars for a mechanic's promise to fix my generator. He disappeared with the bars and half the wiring, leaving me with a treacherous, sputtering machine. I learned then that kindness can be a con. Salvation can be an illusion. Yet something in me stirs at the thought of Green Valley. The ember storms can't reach there, the story goes, because the valley traps humidity from an underground aquifer. It's a myth. Water from a buried oasis so deep that nobody can tap it. Or maybe it's truth. I don't know which is more dangerous, facing the inferno alone, or chasing a possible mirage across the wasteland. I'm running low on options. My next broadcast will include the Green Valley message, verbatim, an invitation for anyone within range to convene. I'll warn of the distance, the fire lines, the militias. I'll urge caution and collaboration. If nobody answers, I'll know it was another lie. If someone does, I'll have to decide. Abandon Fort Ember and risk everything on a journey into the unknown, or stay behind and let the embers claim me. The wind shifts again. A plume of smoke rises on the eastern horizon, likely another patrol's signal fire. I tighten my tool belt, pack my rucksack with the last of my filter cloth, to ration bars, and 3 signal flares. I'll need to record the distance, plan the route by landmarks that still exist, scorched billboards, collapsed overpasses, blackened trees that survived the first wave. I'll have to pedal at night when temperatures drop below the 45 degrees Celsius tipping point, though the cold snaps here barely eclipse 30 degrees Celsius. I wonder, can hope survive on a myth? In the quiet moments, doubt gnaws at me like a rodent chewing through insulation. But every time I broadcast coordinates for water or offer survival tips, I remember why I began this. My voice is more than a crackle in the void. It's proof that someone, somewhere, still cares. That knowledge has kept me alive through sandstorms and sniper patrols and the constant hiss of fires beyond the horizon. Tomorrow's sunrise will reveal whether anyone responds to the Green Valley call. If they do, I'll hear their voices, cautious, trembling, but alive. If not, I'll keep broadcasting until my generator dies or the tower falls. Because in this world of ash and flame, to speak is to exist. To offer a hand is to defy the inferno, and to hope, however slim's, still to fight. So I set my recorder to loop, whispering, coordinates again, 36.9 N, 117.4 W Green Valley. Fresh water, rumored safe haven, travel by night. Avoid the ember line along Old Highway 27. Signal with 3 flares, spaced 10 minutes apart. We muster here. We survive together. I press send, and the signal crackles into the dark. Then I sit back, legs aching, heart pounding, and wait, because tension builds not only from the world's fury, but from the fragile promise of something better on the other side of the flames. I set out at dusk, the air still scorching from a day that crested above 48 degrees Celsius. Behind me, Fort Ember stood silent in the purple hazed gloom, its antenna a lonely silhouette against the dying light. Before me, nearly 150 kilometers of ash-blasted wasteland, threaded with the ember line I'd warned everyone to avoid. My borrowed compass quivered in my hand, its needle twitching between north and northeast. The road was little more than a blackened rut through powdery dunes of Ashhold Highway 27. Now a corridor for patrols and predators. 2 hours into the night, the temperature finally dipped below 30 degrees Celsius. I paused beneath the collapsed overpass at coordinate 35.1 N, 118.0 W, checking my makeshift map by flashlight. My heart pounded in my ears, whether from exertion or nerves. I couldn't tell. I poured the last of my strained water into my canteen and shook out my ration bar. Its foil wrapper crinkled like a dying insect's wing. Eating it felt like a betrayal to the people I'd promised to bring here. but hunger gnawed at my resolve. I chewed slowly, tasting the acrid sweetness of dried peas, and breathed deep through my bandana. I'd been riding alone since sunset. No patrols, no scavengers, no answers. The desert night was deceptively quiet, broken only by the distant hiss of dying fires and the soft skitter of nocturnal insects. I wondered if anyone had heard my broadcast. Was there an answer waiting at Green Valley, or had I just lit a beacon for those who would prey on the hopeful? At midnight, the earth trembled. I froze, hand on my bike, eyes scanning the horizon. A low rumble became a rara wave of sound that rose and fell like distant artillery. I swallowed hard and glanced east, a column of orange flames, hundreds of meters high, twisted into the sky. The ember storm was on the move again, faster and fiercer than anything I'd witnessed. It didn't follow predictable wind patterns. It seemed to breathe with its own malice, hunting. My first thought was to flee west, to put distance between me and that living inferno. But my map said Green Valley lay northeast, beyond the ridge. That separated two burned-out watersheds. If I diverted west, I'd lose precious hours of darkness and risk missing the safe passage window I needed. Every choice felt like a death sentence. I lifted my radio handset, ember front moving east at high speed, coordinates 35.0 N, 118.3 W. I'm continuing toward Green Valley. If you can hear me, cycle after me. Follow my signal flares. The handset fell silent. No voices answered. I replaced the handset and pedaled into the shifting shadows. An hour later, as I navigated the wreckage of an overgrown rest stop, headlights flared behind my two. Then, I froze. They weren't patrol lights. They were bike-mounted LED lamps, low and swept in a methodical search pattern. I ducked beneath a collapsed section of awning and watched figures approach, rifles slung but unraised. Two men and a woman emerged, each wearing scavenged solar gear and patched clothing. The woman's eyes caught mine first. "Mira," she asked, voice breathless. I recognized her accent Karachi stock, like mine. It was Safia, if I wasn't. Dreaming beside her, Junaid's frame was slump-shouldered, a makeshift tourniquet on his forearm stained dark. They both looked half-starved, but alive. "You came," I whispered, disbelief choking me. They ran forward, collapsing into a three-way embrace that tasted of relief and sorrow. "We heard your flares," Safia murmured. "We made it, out of the militia trap after everything went sideways. We followed the ember glow saw it on the ridge end, kept moving." She reached into her pack and pulled out 2 canteens of fresh water. We found an underground spring, just enough to fill these its in Green Valley just past the ridge. Junaid winced as he passed me 1 canteen. We couldn't stay to gather more. Raiders showed up within hours of our arrival. We escaped on foot. His voice was hoarse. "We thought you'd come alone." I rose, legs trembling. "I thought you'd be here, waiting." I drank deeply, water cool against my scorched throat. The world felt sharper, more urgent with life. In my veins again, we grouped under the awning, eyes on the advancing ember front. The wind had shifted to the northeast, meaning the fire wave would reach us in less than 2 hours. "We have to go now," I said, voice steadier than I felt. "We ride south to that ridgeline, then east down into the valley. the ravine. Should funnel us once we're below the rim. The moisture will choke the flames. I traced the route on my map with trembling fingers. Safia nodded. We packed minimal weight, but you'll need extra water. I've got 2 more canteens in my pack filled from the spring. She held them out. I hesitated. Taking them meant doubling my load, but leaving them was unthinkable. Thank you, I said genuinely. I strapped one to my bike frame and shoved the other into my jersey pocket. The ember front's rumble turned into a roar that vibrated the asphalt under our tires. We mounted our bikes and rode in formation, me leading Junaid behind Safia tailing. The first embers arrived within. 10 minutes, tiny sparks dancing in the air, sizzling into ash when they touched metal. I signaled a left turn off the highway onto a narrow service road that climbed a rocky spur. The gradient was steep. I dismounted and pushed for the final stretch, heat waves rippling off the stones. Above us, the sky pulsed orange. We reached the summit as the ember sheet advanced up the highway, flames licking at the asphalt's edges. We paused at the ridge's lip, catching our breaths. Beneath us, the world dropped away into a ravine lined with thorny shrubs and jagged boulders. In the distance, I saw the faint glimmer of green clusters of trees and vines clustered around. What must be the hidden spring? Safia patted Junaid's back. We made it. Her eyes glistened with tears that might have been ash or joy. Junaid collapsed against a boulder. I can't believe it's real. It's real, I said, voice trembling, but not safe yet. We have to descend fast. We began the descent on foot, bikes slung over our shoulders. Embers and embers' roar filled the air, but as we dropped into the ravine, the sound dimmed. The temperature fell noticeably. Humidity rose. Prickly vines brushed our arms, and beneath our boots, damp earth gave way to velvet moss around a narrow creek. I knelt, cupped my hands, and drank. The water was icy, sweet as memory. Junaid followed. Safia let out a laugh that echoed off the rocky walls, a sound I haven't heard in months, but the moment shattered. A deep crack split. The air, the ridge above, groaned, and boulders tumbled down, smashing into the creek. We sprinted toward a cluster of trees, but the ground shook so violently I staggered. A dust plume from above swallowed half the ravine in seconds, and then hollow, echoing the roar of collapse. The ridge had given way, redirecting the ember. Front into our hideaway. We sprinted as snap-crack of burning timbers collided with the boulders. I reached for Safia's arm, pulling her into a fissure between 2 granite slabs. Junaid dove in after us. The earth trembled. Flames thundered. Past the ravine's mouth like a living tide. Ash poured in, a roiling fog of death. We held our breath as the fire wave crashed overhead. The air heated to blinding white, then scorched. The rocks at our shoulders glowed. Sparks rained through the fissure's slits. We pressed our backs against cool stone, lungs screaming for air we couldn't draw. 20 heartbeats passed. Then 30. Then the roar began to fade, like a monstrous engine winding down. The smoke thinned, the heat eased. I exhaled, tasting char and grit. Safia coughed, then laughed, again soaked in sweat and soot. "We're alive," she gasped. Her hand found mine. "We're alive." Junaid nodded, face streaked with ash. "Green Valley," he rasped. "It's real." I rose slowly, expecting collapse, but finding strength instead. The world around us was a scorched theater, but at its center flowed life. The spring ran clear. Vines climbed the ravine walls, feeding on buried water. A single mangled radio antenna beacon jutted. From the shattered remains of a supply cache, I closed my eyes. Every loss, every ember storm, every sleepless night led me here. My radio voice a whisper in the static had summoned a miracle. I thought of the listeners I'd never met, the ones I'd failed, and those I'd saved. Guilt and relief tangled in my chest. But above all, I felt purpose, burning brighter than any flame. I knelt by the stream, filling every container I carried. Safia and Junaid gathered water too, scooping moss through their hands. In the dim light of lantern glow, caged by the ravine, we tasted the future. This was the turning point. Beyond this burn line, we would rebuild, starting with a single spring, a battered antenna, and 3 stubborn souls who dared to hope. The fires might rage yet, but here, in the heart of Green Valley, survival took root again. And as for Mimira Khalid, voice of the Ember's Eye, would broadcast this truth far and wide. We lived. The dust settled over Green Valley like a slow exhale. Ash clung to leaves, but beneath it, new life pulsed. The spring ran steady, clear as memory, and the ravine, walls once, blackened bore, streaks of moss and tiny green shoots pushing through cracks. As dawn broke, I stood at the creek's edge, water lapping over stones, worn smooth by centuries of flow. Junaid and Safia knelt beside me, cupping water in calloused hands. None of us spoke at first. The stillness demanded reverence, our decision. To follow the Ember Front into Green Valley had been nothing short of reckless. We'd risked our lives on a rumor, a myth born of desperation. But in the eerie glow of that moment, huddled in the fissure, as fire roared past overhead, we found proof that myth could become reality. The ridge collapse had funneled the ember wave past the ravine's mouth, sparing us and the spring. Now, shelled though these canyon walls were, they sheltered a micro-ecosystem that defied the inferno on the plains. This place would not remain untouched forever. Fires crept closer every season, but for now, it was a refuge. We salvaged planks from the shattered supply cache to fashion a lean-to, draping tarps and reflective foil to capture dew each night. I rigged the old antenna we'd found to my broadcast rig, bolting it to a sturdy boulder. By midday, I pedaled the generator again, microphone crackling to life with my first broadcast from Green Valley. To anyone listening, this is Mira Khalid, broadcasting from Green Valley. Coordinates 36.9 N, 117.4 W. We have fresh water, growing food, and shelter. If you can reach us, come. We're rebuilding together. The signal was weak, but it carried farther than I'd dared hope. A handful of responses trickled in. Over the next hours, voices thin with relief, others thick with disbelief. A family of 4 stranded near Crescent Falls, a small Menek team from the former California State Hospital, a group of engineers claiming to have salvaged desalination, equipment near the coast. Each voice stoked the spark of community I'd feared was lost forever. The situation was far from all better. Junaid's arm, still stiff from its makeshift tourniquet, ached with each movement. Safia's eyes, bright with exhilaration, bore dark circles from weeks of sleepless nights. My own lungs rasped. From inhaling hot ash, some mornings I woke coughing shards of soot. We scavenged what supplies we could, canned beans from the cache, injured battery packs for the rig, scraps of cloth for filters. But the world beyond Green Valley remained a raging furnace. We had hope, yes, but we also had reality. The engineer. Group's desalination setup required fuel we didn't have. The medic team's antibiotics would run out in weeks. The family from Crescent Falls needed seeds and shelter, not just water. Every plan hinged on new arrivals, new resources, new alliances, and on my broadcasts reaching ears that were still breathing in this calm after the storm. I felt my old self, the climate scientist who once measured temperatures, with the survivor who had pedaled through ember storms. Data charts had given way to coordinates shouted into a microphone. Peer-reviewed papers had given way to ration bar sermons. Yet amid this collision, I found a new identity, forged in flame and hope. I remember the fear that once anchored me, fear of alone, fear of running out, fear of silence on the other end of the radio. Those fears remained, but they'd sharpened into resolve. I no longer asked, is anyone out there? I broadcast, here we are, join us. I carried my losses lawless, scarf singed, Aaron's silent radio, pliaz, talismans, reminders that even in the darkest moments, human connection could bridge any chasm. Standing by the creek, I let the water run over my fingers, feeling its cool pulse. I remembered my sister's laugh light as rain on jasmine, and I let that memory warm my chest. I realized that hope wasn't just an abstract beacon. It was a series of actions. Digging a lean-to, patching a filter, spinning the pedal generator, speaking into the static. Each step was a promise to keep moving, to keep rebuilding. Green Valley's microclimate offered a glimpse of what the world could be, a place where water carved life from stone, where ash-blasted earth could still sprout green. We began planting seed packets from the med team's supplies, drought-tolerant legumes, heirloom grains that could grow in cratered soil. Each tiny sprout felt miraculous, a rebellion against the global megafires. But beyond our canyon walls, the world continued its downward spiral. Smoke plumes still billowed on the horizon. Satellite heat maps, when I could download them via the engineer group's uplink, showed no meaningful cooldown. Polar ice had retreated to record lows. Monsoon patterns remained broken. The planetary feedback loops we once studied, from pyroconvection to brown cloud albedo effects, were still spinning. If anything, the crisis was deepening. We tolerated that knowledge in measured doses. Once a day, after the generator cooled, I'd review the latest data with the engineers, translating jargon into bulletins for our growing community. We mapped safe corridors, warned of militia checkpoints, circulated tips on ash filtration. Those broadcasts carried our story beyond the valley, reminding others that pockets of life still existed in the days that followed. Small victories accrued like dewdrops on a tarp. The family from Crescent Falls arrived for bodies, gaunt but smiling. They carried rucksacks heavy with canned peaches and solar batteries. They helped us dredge a second micro-catchment channel to boost our nighttime water yield. The engineers rigged a hand-cranked desalination test rig to process creek water through char clay membranes. Delivering a trickle of salt-free water, we organized communal watches to guard against marauders, set up quiet hours for the generator to conserve, fuel and trained volunteers to maintain the broadcast rig. A makeshift council formed Junaid, handling security patrols, Safia teaching food preservation workshops, me hosting nightly radio salons where anyone could share news or stories. Our population peaked at 30 Solstini, but enough to kindle a sense of social fabric. ... Yet, hope like ember smoke always carried back to the world beyond. Each new arrival brought tales of starvation camps and sniper-guarded wells. The desalination rig's initial success faltered when the membranes clogged. Replacement parts were months away, if they existed at all. Our little oasis felt as precarious as a candle in a wind tunnel. I bore those contradictions with the same stoicism. I applied to pedal power forecasts, record the data, report the facts, then turn the page. At night, I sat on the ridge above the creek, watching Smith's Peak once brown, now dotted with fresh green. I imagined what would happen if every valley could become a green valley, each canyon a refuge. But I also knew that most valleys would burn long before seeds could sprout. My own hope felt both audacious and fragile. I am no longer simply a survivor. I am a catalyst, a broadcaster, whose voice shapes small webs of connection across a fractured planet. I've embraced the role because it gave meaning to loss. The scientist in me still aches for data, for models, for global solutions. But the survivor in me knows that global solutions die on the vine. When no one drinks the water or shields the sprout, Green Valley changed me. It taught me that hope is an ecosystem. It requires resources, care, and community. A single sprig of moss can herald recovery, but without water, it withers. A bomber pilot can believe in saving the world, but without a pedal generator, no one hears the plea, the ember storms will return. They always do. I can already smell the roasting pine on the wind, a reminder that the fire line lies ever close. Yet I no longer wake each morning paralyzed by dread. Instead, I rise with intention to scan the horizon for threats, to broadcast coordinates for aid, to tend our fledgling gardens, and to keep the spark of human connection alight. I gather Junaid and Safia at the creek each dawn. We drink deep, pause in silence, then begin the day's tasks, patrols, broadcasts, gardening, mechanical repairs. At dusk, we share stories of lost families, of days before the megafires, of glories now unimaginable. We laugh quietly at our clumsy jokes, mindful that laughter itself is a rebuke to despair. When I rest my head on a sack of grain at night, I feel the valley hum a blend of water over stone, wind through young leaves, and the distant drone of a revived generator. I clutch Layla's singed scarf beneath my pillow, its frayed edges a token of the world that was, and a reminder of the world we must still save. The aftermath of our climax is neither total salvation nor utter collapse. Green Valley stands as both haven and harbinger, a fragile cradle of new life amidst still smoldering ruins. My own journey continues to unfold between ash and agriculture, between the roar of ember storms and the whisper of seedlings. I have seen the worst of our collapse, and here I have glimpsed a path forward, even if it is narrow, winding, and fraught with risk. And so I continue to broadcast, to build, to hope, because in this broken world, the smallest acts of water, planting seeds, speaking another's name, the truest measure of survival. In the echo of my final reflection, I whisper into the microphone, we are here, we are alive, we will endure. I never imagined I'd find myself here, at the edge of Green Valley, watching sunrise shimmer through a haze of smoke and dew. The world beyond these canyon walls still burns firestorms, rage in scarred lowlands. Ember clouds choke the sky, and the ash that blankets the plains drifts in on every wind. Yet here, amid moss-lined stones and trickling springs, life persists in stubborn defiance. Hope, I've learned, is as fragile as the first green shoot breaking through ash-baked soil. One misstep another, ember storm, a militia raid, a failed water filter and it can wither. But I've witnessed that shoot grow over days, fed by scraps of water and whispered encouragement. I've watched refugees arrive, gaunt and trembling, only to stand straighter as they taste clean water, tend seedlings, and add their voices to our nightly broadcasts. Their presence has become the heartbeat of this place. Still, the future remains uncertain. The engineer team's desalination rig works only intermittently. Membrane replacements sit months away if they ever arrive. Our seed stores are finite. The med team's antibiotics will run out in weeks. Each new face that arrives carries hope and also need. Every decision we make, what to plant, how much water to ration, which messages to broadcast, has weight. We can neither rebuild the old world nor guarantee safety from the inferno beyond. And yet, despite all that, I wake each dawn determined to try again. I rise before light breaks, strapping Layla's singed scarf around my neck as ritual, remembrance, and armor. I pedal the generator for morning bulletins coordinates for incoming travelers. Warnings of shifting ember fronts, updates on our water yields and garden progress. My voice echoes off the valley walls, a small, defiant beacon in the encroaching, dark dot. Sometimes, as I speak, I feel the weight of every listener who never replied, every failed expedition, every life lost to thirst or smoke. Guilt flares hotter than any fire, but I channel it into purpose. Each broadcast is a promise. We are here. We will share what we have. We will not forget you. In those moments, I'm neither climate scientist nor solitary survivor. I'm the keeper of a fragile spark that might yet ignite new worlds. We've learned unexpected survival tactics that feel almost sacrilegious against the scale of disaster. We bank dew in plastic sheeting at night, scrub ash-coated solar panels with damp cloth at dawn, and grind char from our lean-tos. Burned support beams into makeshift filters. We've discovered that certain desert succulents yield moisture when sliced and squeezed a trick. I broadcast as nature's hidden dew bottles. I never thought I'd coax water from a thorny plant, but necessity has a way of bending the rules of science. Our small community now numbers 50 souls. We've constructed a listening post, raised platform rigged with multiple receivers to pick up distant broadcasts. Last night, we heard a hesitant voice, a group trapped near the old Capitol ruins, begging for coordinates to the valley. We charted them a nighttime route, warning them of militia checkpoints and ember corridors. and pledged to leave water caches along the way. It was a risky outreach, extending ourselves beyond our fragile cradle butt, because hope, when shared, is never quite extinguished. As dusk settled over the canyon today, I climbed to the ridge and looked back the way I'd come months ago, across the scorched highway, through rubble where clinics once stood, past the flicker of distant fires. I thought of the scientist I used to buys glued to climate models, heartbreaking over graphs I couldn't translate into action. Now my model is human. The number of moving bodies we save each week, the liters of water captured per night, the sprouting seedlings per square meter of ash. It's imperfect mathematics, but it breathes. I won't lie and say I expect Green Valley to endure unchanged. The world beyond remains the same furnace it's always been. Climate feedback loops continue their relentless march. Each ember storm eats away at the edges of this haven. But that's not why I cling to hope. I cling because of the human spark, that no fire can fully consume the gentle courage of a stranger sharing 2 canteens of water, the laughter of a child learning to plant seeds, the collective heartbeat of 50 lives united against oblivion. My final broadcast tonight will carry the same mixture of warning and invitation to all survivors within range. This is Green Valley calling. We have water, shelter, and community. We have seed banks and medical supplies, though they're finite. If you can travel by night and follow our flares 3 in rapid succession, 10 minutes apart we'll guide you here. Know this, every step you take toward us is a step toward shared survival. We are not the end of your journey, but we might be the beginning of something new. Keep breathing, keep believing, and know you're not alone. Between those words, I will pause and let the valley absorb them. Let the echoes carry them into every crevice of the canyon. Then I will sign off with a phrase I've meant for months. Stay alive, stay human. Green Valley out. I don't. Pretend this ending offers closure. The world outside will burn again. More will die in the ash. But in this moment, we have a fragile harbor, a place where a handful of souls have chosen to fight back. And as long as my voice crackles through the static, as long as canteens hold water and seeds lie beneath the soil, there will be reason to see another sunrise. Because survival is not a destination. It's a continuous act of hope. And so we pedal, we plant, we broadcast, and we endure one breath, one heartbeat, one shared story at a time.